I spent years training myself to only take up half the space in a bed, leaving space for the other person on the other side. Then several months after my divorce, I woke up and I'm like, why am I still squeezed way over nice and neat on half when there's nobody I'm sharing the bed with anymore? I've been training my body for over 30 years to only take up half the space. And apparently, no one told my sleeping self that my marriage was over. So that night, I did something ridiculously small. I moved over into the middle of the bed, and I took the blankets and I just balled them up all over me exactly how I wanted. I was able to sprawl out over the whole bed like it was just mine, because it was just mine. It sounds like nothing, but it really isn't nothing. I had been living by rules for a life I didn't have anymore. And you know what? This story isn't really about a bed. A few weeks ago, I was getting ready to go out for a meeting. I thought I'd do one last check in the mirror just to check the makeup. And I paused for a second. I'm looking in the mirror and I'm thinking, I look older with my makeup on than I did before I put it on. I realized it wasn't my skin, it was the makeup. I would always just do the same routine. It didn't involve powdered makeup. Now I've hit that magical age where the powder actually adheres to the wrinkles, making the wrinkles look more pronounced than they are without makeup. Nobody tells you that at a certain point, the powdered makeup needs to become cream. That the tools you've used for years have an expiration date and you're not gonna get a warning label. You just wake up one day and you look in the mirror and you just don't even recognize who's looking back at you. So I switched to my first cream makeup. It was just a little stick. Actually, it's Boomstick. Loved it. It sounds so small, but it really wasn't. It was proof that catching up wasn't a failure. It was that I'm finally catching up with who I am now. This story really isn't about makeup either. See, my skin didn't need the same makeup anymore, and my bed didn't need to stay divided anymore. And if something as small and automatic as sleep could be running on old rules I never questioned, what else was? I started noticing these leftover rules everywhere, and once you see them, you cannot unsee them. I want to say something clearly, because I don't think it is a failure on our part when your world changes. I think really autopilot, it's how you survive. It's how you get through the day when everything else is too heavy to think about. You don't examine the small stuff when you're just trying to hold the big stuff together. That's not weakness, my friend. That's how we make it through. The question is just what happens once you're standing again. So here's what I want you to do, not later or right now while you're watching this. Think of one thing you do exactly the same way every single time and ask yourself honestly, do I do it this way because it's still right for me? Or is it just because this is how I've always done it? Maybe it's the route you drive to work or the recipe you've made for years without even asking yourself, do you still like the taste of it? For me, it was my drink order. The same glass of wine every single time I went out. And of course, it's rosé. But plenty of people are still ordering the drink they picked 20 years ago without even ever asking if their taste changed. It sounds small, I know, but how much of your life right now is actually a choice? And how much of it is just leftover from before? None of these are wrong. That's not the point. The point is, most of us have never stopped long enough to check. We just keep on doing. Powder instead of cream, tucked into one side of the bed that's entirely ours now because we don't stop to ask why. Nothing seems to be falling apart, so we just don't want to look too closely. But here's what I've learned. Just because something isn't broken doesn't mean it's still yours. Sometimes it's just leftover. You didn't choose it. You just never stopped doing it. Every January, I pick one word to carry me through the year. This year, that word was permission. I didn't know yet how many places I needed it. My bed, my mirror, my own 2 feet, standing in the middle of a life that I was still learning how to live. Turns out permission isn't one big decision you make once. It's hundreds of small ones made over and over in places where nobody's watching. So here's where I've landed. I'm not gonna tell you to overhaul your life or question everything you do tomorrow morning. That's not realistic, and honestly, it's not the point. The point is smaller than that, and somehow bigger too. It's just permission. Permission to notice. Permission to ask why, even about the tiny things. Permission to change something simply because you want to. Not because it's wrong, not because it's broken, but because you get to decide now. You're allowed to switch from powder to cream. You're allowed to sleep in the middle of a bed. That's yours. Whatever your version of this is, you're allowed to have it. I'll see you next time.